Last week, we told you how cancer clinical trials are coming to Bay County. Now we're taking you inside what that really means for patients and why doctors say it could change the future of care here at home.
For patients already fighting cancer, traveling for treatment can be just one more burden. But now with clinical trials happening locally, that stress might start to lift. At Florida Cancer Affiliates, Senior Clinical Research Coordinator Zai Diadar says bringing clinical trials here is about more than science. It's about access.
That means new, not only treatments, but devices and approaches that people in this area have been traveling long distances to get, but now it's in our community.
For Dr. Christopher Haberman, this work is personal. Before moving to Panama City, he saw clinical trials change lives.
I've had multiple positive patient outcomes, multiple medications that eventually got FDA approval and became the standard of care, and so they benefit from that years before it was approved.
Here locally, they're just getting started. Florida Cancer Affiliates has already enrolled its first patient in a lung cancer trial. It's a step Haberman says builds on decades of progress. He says clinical trials are the reason cancer care shifted from primarily chemotherapy to targeted immunotherapy.
It's exciting because you know that that drug's probably going to get FDA approval, so it's another drug in the armamentarium to treat cancer.
Throughout the process, safety comes first. Data is monitored closely and patients are checked at every step. For patients who've exhausted other options, Haberman says you don't have to do it alone.
It's not an easy decision to make. Being diagnosed with cancer has its own set of emotions up and down and going through treatments, and it's just overwhelming. I can't even imagine how patients figure out what they're going to do.
And while trials may offer hope for today's patients, Haberman says their impact reaches far beyond. What helps one person now could save countless lives tomorrow.
Medical Monday is sponsored by Cardiovascular Institute of Northwest Florida, providing nationally certified cardiovascular services right here at home.
Haberman says clinical trials don't just treat patients, they shape the future of cancer care. For more information on trials that might benefit you, you can visit clinicaltrials.gov.